we don't need roads.
Mr. Fuqua, an honor to see you again, sir. How are you?
I'm well, man. Good to see you, Jake.
I'm going to jump into this because I got 1,000 questions for you. By my calculations, and forgive me if I'm wrong, this is the only character that you've ever continued with as a director. And it makes me wonder, though, how often you, like we do, think about these characters after the credits start to roll. So I am curious, not to say you want to do a sequel that you've never done, but how often do you wonder what happens to a character after you let go of them? And is there one of your characters in particular you're most curious to just know how life worked out for them?
Well, we know how it worked out for Alonzo on Training Day. That was
Was it the Russians know how it worked out for Alonzo?
Yeah, so that didn't work out so well. I think Mag 7 is a character that I think about. What happens in that guy's life like that? Where do they go from there? That's the character that I think about.
Do you think about them often, or is it a when the movie's over, the movie's over?
No, I think about him often. That particular character, I grew up with Westerns, so I'm always thinking of what's the journey of that character after that, Where does that go?
You mentioned Alonzo. Mr. Washington told me the story years back that he ad-libbed the King Kong line on the set of Training Day, which I think is fantastic. That's obviously a famous example of him sort of his ability to do that. But I'm sort of curious as to how often he does that. Is there an example of Robert McCall that is entirely him that he added in the moment like he did with the King Kong line?
Yeah, the tea bag and the napkin and the spoon. Yeah, that was something that Denzel created. Absolutely. And the first one in the cafe, he sat there and he started doing his thing and the spoon, and I'm just watching it and I was like, well, this is fantastic. I got to go get that, Yeah.
Okay, so I'm sort of curious as to what your reaction is in those moments. Can you take me back to when he said the King Kong line? Like, what do you do in those moments? Do you look around and like flip through the script and go, where did that come from?
King Kong ain't got on me.
Oh, yeah. Especially King Kong line, because, I was so in that moment with him. I was watching him, and I just saw him going to a different place. And so at the end of it, it was just like, is it in focus? Did we get that? Because I knew it wasn't happening again, because he was in the moment. Like, that's a one-take thing. There's no other take. In fact, it's a little buzz on that anamorphic lens. It's a little soft. But I was like, that's it.
I just got so much anxiety for your focus puller in the thought of like, if it hadn't been in focus, like I am just, if we're talking about a 15-year-old movie and I've just got chills thinking about what would have happened if it hadn't been in focus.
I was feeling the same way. I was like, you sure? Because that's on film. It wasn't digital back then. So I didn't get to see it until I saw the rushes.
Unbelievable. There's a great line in this film. You seem like a man who understands violence, which I feel like can be said of you as a filmmaker. Your films often do feature violence, but it is always handled in a brilliant way, whether it be in a fun way or even obviously in a much more serious way. How do you approach violence as a filmmaker? And not to make a joke of it, but do you have a favorite act of violence in your entire filmography?
I don't have a favorite act of violence. I have a favorite moment of violence. Like the Russians in the first one, and also Alonzo's death, because they deserved it. The bad guys deserved it. I look at violence like dialogue, right? There's no such thing as a fair fight, right? A fight's a fight. You know what I mean? Like, so growing up the way I grew up, I know there's no such thing as a fair fight. So if you get in a fight with somebody in the bar stool can wind up over your head or a glass can wind. There's no such thing. So that's how I look at it. It's brutal.
Well, that's why your films are as brilliant as they are. Mr. Fuqua, I remember being taken by my parents to see Bait on the big screen in theaters, which I love and have on VHS and have followed you the entire journey. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you for continuing to make amazing films and for fitting me in your schedule. It's always a really great conversation.
Thank you, my man. It's always good to see you, man. Be well.
Take care, sir.
Okay, now. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Where we're going, we don't need roads.